Hello, good evening. Evening, everyone. So today, what we are going to do, we are going to be working on another app since we've completed the last one that we worked on. So in this one, what we are going to build, we are going to just build an app that just shows the time in different time zones. So that's what we are going to be working on. So first thing first, we need to initialize our project. So to do that, just run the command in the folder of your choice. Just run expo init expo init now initializing projects. So you run that. So okay, I want to share my screen, but I can't share. Okay, so yes, we just run share my screen now. So just run the command expo init, then the name of the app, what you want to call the app. Then it will install all the needed dependencies and everything we need. So this is like what we did, similar to what we did in the previous lessons. Okay. So while that's installing, so basically the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to set up just the basic screens, add fonts and all. So yeah, also add our uploading components too. That's what we're going to do. That's like the first thing we're going to be working on. Okay, so this is taking some time. Also, while that also the API we're also going to be working with an API. So an API, just the way we can get data from the internet. The API we're going to be using is World Time API. So you can open your browser, check that out. The World Time API. They also offer dates and times in different time zones. So now that this is done, I'll just see into that dates app. Then code dots to open, yeah, to open VS Code. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is we are going to install the expo uploading component. So the command for that, so yeah, you can see my screen here. So the command for that is the same thing, just going to be expo install expo uploading. So we'll just run that to install the package, the expo uploading package. Also, just create a folder fonts and just put in any fonts that you want. So there, this is my own, just like a folder, Poppies bold, Poppins regular. So those are two fonts that I want. You can just download any fonts, keep it inside the fonts folder. So that's that. The next thing we are going to do in our home.js, we create a new folder in our root directory. We create a new folder called screens. Okay, so in that screens folder, we're going to create a new file home.js. So for now, what we'll have inside the home.js, just some okay, so um let us have just a basic view and text, and we'll just import that from React Native. Okay, then we now export function, export default function home and yeah, just a text that just says home. So yeah, this is just basic. Also, let's just import our styles. Let's also import our styles and create a new folder for the styles. Then inside that styles folder, so I'm going a bit faster. So yeah, just some basic styles. Let me just quickly walk through what we have here. So um all we have here just some basic styles, title text, paragraph, container, body, button text. So that's what we have here. Then now in our app.js, first thing we're going to do, need this. We don't need this anymore. Well, we're not going to be needing this again. Let me adjust the indentation. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So similar to what we did in the last project. So in our app.js, it will have something. I'll just paste that in our work tree. Also, all the code is on my GitHub, so you can check that out. So basically, this is like similar to what we had last time. I using the app loading use fonts. So if fonts have not loaded, we're just going to return the app loading components. Else we return the home component, and in the home components, what we have here is just a text that says home. So like now, what we've just done now is just the basic setup. So let me just run expose that so you can see out. So you can see this and see what we have. Okay, I'm not sure if my screen is showing. Okay, so I'm not sure. I think my screen should be showing now. Screen should be showing. Okay, so okay, now what I'm going to do, I want to try to launch the app so we can see what we have. We can see what we have. So okay, let me share the app what we have at the moment. Okay, so this just basically just home. So we're just showing this. So this is just all we have for now. So now let's now take this. Let's take this further. Let's take this further. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to so Expo has this library that is called localization. So it just gets some basic defaults for us, like maybe like the language of the device, the time zone of that particular device, and other stuffs like that. So now, so first thing we're going to do is we import the logo in our app.js. Our app.js, okay, we're going to import localization, and also let's implement this style equals to global styles.container and style equals to global styles dot title text. Okay. So if you are running this with me, you should see the updated information. Okay. Okay, so now So the next thing we're going to do now, okay, we've already imported localization already. Then once that is done inside our home.js, we imported localization. So the next thing we are going to do, we are going to create a function. That function above our export, we're exporting the function, we'll just say const. So it's we're creating an arrow function. We'll just call that function fetch data. So just be so we set up the arrow function basically. So what we are now going to do is we are going to make the function asynchronous. So making it asynchronous, we just keep async in front of the parentheses. So an asynchronous function, if you have a function that is asynchronous, what that means is that like when I'm fetching the data, like that data might not be available to us immediately, like in real time. So what we are going to do is we are going to wait for it to arrive. So inside the body of our function, we create a variable, say response. So now response is going to be equals to, we are going to await. We are now going to use the JavaScript Fetch Api. We are now going to fetch, let me just copy it. So okay, so this function takes in a parameter time zone, time zone. So now what we're now going to do, we're now going to fetch the data from the API. So what we're using is the default JavaScript fetch. So when we fetch, we are going to fetch the data for the API, from the API. So once that data is fetched, we're now going to await it. So create a new variable const data. I'm now going to await response.json. They will now return that variable data. So that's what I'm going to do. So inside our home function, we're going to create two states. So the two states we're going to set up is time zone and date. So the thing is that this time zone state is going to hold the default time zone, and this date is going to store the dates. Okay, so now we are now going to, so when the, so we want to run a function that when the app loads, we want to get the time zone of that device and fetch the date. So how we're going to do that, we're going to use a use effect tool. So use effect, it lets us run a particular function when something happens. So inside the use effect, inside the parentheses, we just specify an arrow function. Then it takes into parameters an arrow function, and the second parameter is going to be an array. So that array represents what, like if inside the array we can keep in name. So if this variable name changes, it will run what is inside. But if we just leave it empty, this function will only run, function is only going to run when, this function is only going to run when the app first initializes. So that's what is going to happen. So now what we're now going to do is we're going to set the time zone. So we already imported localization. So we'll just set the time zone to localization dot time zone. And we can now set the date. That's the variable date. We're now going to await, we're going to fetch the localization dot time zone, and we're going to set the date. Okay. So I'm not sure why my screen is not showing. So for you to follow along, I'll just paste a link to where you can get the source code. So it's on my GitHub. So currently we are on the lesson two, lesson two. So you can follow along with that. Let me paste in the link now. Um, so the link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. Okay. So now the next we are going to do is so now Inside our use effects hook, so what we have, we are setting the time zone, that's localization dot time zone, and we are now setting the dates. So first we are going to fetch the dates and we are passing in the local time zone of that device. So I am now going to use the hook to set that particular date. Also, to make this work, we have to make this use effect hook asynchronous. So we just add in the keyword async in front of the arrow function so we can await the data fetching. So that's what is happening here. So now if you just keep a console.log, you can log the data and you see that actually you are getting an object that contains different information, different informations. So what else are we going to do? Okay, so I think now the next thing we are going to do, we are going to look at formatting and displaying the dates. Okay, so the first thing, so now that is the part 3, the code. I sent the link to the code in the chat. Okay, my screen is up now. Okay, so now the part 3, what is going to happen here is, firstly, inside our styles.js, let us update the styles. So I just added some slight changes, slight modifications to the styles that we have. So nothing too serious. So it's just to make everything look nicer. Okay. So now that we've updated our styles inside our home.js, we're going to display the time zone, the we're going to display the time zone, the time, and the dates. So before we can even do any of that, we need to install a library that will help us to format the dates. Okay, yeah, we're going to need to install a library that will help us to format the date. So that library is called Moments. It's called Moment. So why am I getting, okay, screens? Why am I getting this error? Okay, upload this. Why do I do screens? Okay, I think, let me close this terminal and go to start. I think it should be okay. I think that's just a slight error. And let me restart everything up to make sure. Okay, yeah, everything is working perfectly. Everything is working perfectly. Okay, so now let's just install that expo install moment. So it's a library that also helps us to format dates. So that's basically what it does. Still getting an error. Report all as okay. Oh yeah, I was supposed to. I forgot to install expo localization. Yes, we have to install that. So let me install that first. That's the problem we're having earlier. Okay. So when this is done, the next we're going to install is moments. Expo install moments. Okay, so now inside here, let's create a new folder. We'll call that folder utils. Inside here, we create a new folder utils, and inside that folder, we create a new file. We call it moments.js. So first thing we do, we're going to import moment for moments. Okay. Now that we've imported this, the next thing we want to do is we want to create functions that would help us set the date and set the time. So let us make it a class. Let us create our custom class moments. So inside this moment, you will have a function, we call that function get date. So it takes in date. So first thing, if there's no date, we just return an empty string. Okay, so the first thing we now call moment.locale. So that just sets the language. So just default language of the device, English. So now we now return to say moment, to call moment dot pass zone and date and format. So if you go online, moment has different ways of formatting the dates. This is the format we are going to use. So I've already looked this up and this will fit what I want to do. So why I'm adding this pass zone is that by default, moments converts the time zone, the dates that you sent to the default time zone of the device. But we don't want that. What we want to do is we want to set it we want to leave it as that because we are controlling the time zone. We want to see dates in different time zones. So now we also have another function, it gets time. Okay, so it's going to be the same thing to just get the time from there, but the format should be LTS. That will just display it to something like maybe 456. So the hour, the minutes, the seconds, and the the PM or AM. So it just displays it this way. Yeah, so that's what that does. And this one, it will give us something like Monday, January, no, it does Monday, January 1st, and 2022 or whatever the date it is. That's how that works. So now, next thing we're going to do now is so now in our screens, inside our home.js, what we're now going to do is instead of okay, let me just duplicate this text, duplicate this. So this one will be large text. This title text. Okay, also I just noticed that we are going even having an error. So we're supposed to import React because we're using state, so we need to import React from React. Okay, okay, we're also getting another error, time zone. It is supposed to be small letter Z, so that's another error too. Okay, I didn't even spell this right, time zone. Okay, so now if you are following along and I feel that you should be seeing what I'm seeing. So just three home text, just three home. So that's what it's showing. So at the end, we would now look at the app that we built together because time is already good. So we'll just try to move a bit faster. So now that that is done, so the first thing I'm going to display here, also the first thing we do angle bracing so we can display some just curly brace so we can display something dynamic. So first we are going to display the time zone. Here, first we are going to do, we need to import, let's import moments. So now we're not importing it from the library directly. We're going to import our own custom moment. So from util/moment, we're going to import moment. So forgot to have to export default. So since this is a class, we will need to initialize it. So that's new moment. Then this call this bracket. So that will initialize this class. So now we have an object of moments that we're now importing from here. Okay. What is this red? Let me cancel this first. Import. Okay. from. Yes, so that was wrong there. So first we'll do moment dot get. Remember we created this function earlier. Get time. And we pass in what are we going to pass in? I don't let us so we pass in dates dot time zone. Dates dot date time. That's the first thing we'll pass. Then here we want to do the date. So we'll say moment dot get dates. I will pass in date dot date time. So now if you go to the app, what we have now is so yeah, we just have this. So we have the it's saying can't resolve module utils dot moment utils. Let me see what is wrong with this. Okay, yeah, was to come out of this directly, so double dots. I think that should fix up that error. So if you so now what we now have now is Africa slash Lagos because that's our default time zone, showing the time and it's showing the dates. So if you're following along, that is going to be the same thing that you have. So now that we've done that, we're now going to okay now we've displayed it. So now that we're looking at it, okay, we can see that this like the date, sorry, the time is not being updated live, like it's just displaying once. So next we are going to work on is to make it display live. So how we're going to do that is we're going to create another hook. Okay, we're going to create another hook. So that hook will be React dot another use effects hook. So now the difference here is that this will only run anytime our time zone changes. So if our time zone changes, we want to run what is here. So if we don't have any time zone, we just return. We just return. We don't do anything. Just return. But if we have a time zone, what do we want to do? So we want to set interval. So want to set interval is the way in JavaScript. We want to run something continuously. So set interval. Then we specify an arrow function. Okay. Then how long do we want it to run? When the what interval every second? So it takes it in milliseconds. So 1000 milliseconds, that's equivalent to 1 second. Then we now create a date. So our variable date is now going to be equal to. So we're now going to now await. Okay, so firstly we want to make this asynchronous too. So I now okay, then we pass in the time zone. Yes, then after that, what we now do is we're now going to set the date. So the dates the new dates that we got. So now, if you go to your app screen, okay, so the synchronous is supposed to be here. With this set interval, we're making asynchronous. So if you go to your app screen, you see that it's updating every second. So what is actually going on? Let's look at this together. So the first thing that is going on is that when we open the app, it sets the time zone to our local time zone, and that's this. Then it sets the date, so it fetches the date and sets the dates here. So now when we set the time zone, okay, so really we don't even need this, okay. But what does happen is that we set the time zone here, then it now triggers a change. So the time zone has changed because we are setting it here. So it now calls this. Okay, so it seems that we have a time zone. It won't just return. It won't just like don't do anything. So it now does this every. So it keeps calling this every second. So every second is going to be updating our dates with the new dates that it's getting. So that's this variable. And what we're displaying here is the formatted version of these dates. So here we're just formatting the dates and we are displaying it. So now that is the part 4. So now let's go to part 5. That's the second to the last part. So now the part 5 of this, what we are now going to do in this next part, we are going to firstly let's update the style. So yeah, I added some because now we're going to add inputs and some other stuff. So yeah, we're going to need some new styles. Okay, where is the styles global.js? Okay, yeah, so you can just this is not a design class, but this we are building the app. So I won't really go into much details about this, but this is just CSS. So if you want to like learn how to customize the designs more, you can read up on how to use CSS. So yeah, that's for this. Okay. So now what we're now going to do is we want to make users be able to enter a custom time zone. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do in our home.js, we are going to import two things. We are going to import the text inputs. We're also going to need to import pressable. Those are the two things we are going to need. Okay, so now inside our container, I'll just bring this in. So we're just going to have two things. So this text input and a custom button. So yeah, this is just using the basic style. So now let's create the functionality to let's add some functionality to it. First, we are going to need a state to track the input. So we'll say time zone, and set input time zone. Okay, so set input time zone is equals to react dot use state. Okay, so we have that. Then the next thing we are going to do is we're going to create a function that when we press this button, we want something to happen. What do we want to happen? We want to set we want to update the time zone. So from handle submit, as I call the function. So we just create an arrow function, and inside that what we just do what we just do is we just say set time zone. So that's this function here that we're calling. So I'm just going to set time zone to the input time zone. We're just setting it to what the user imputed. So how that is even being tracked. So the value that is displaying here is the value that is inside this state. And anytime we change the text, it's passing it to this set input time zone. So when the text changes, it's passing the new text to this set input time zone and it's updating this input time zone. So that way we can always track what is inside the inputs at any given time. Okay, so now if you have your so if okay, so now let's do something now. So let's test this out. Let me enter a time zone. Let me get a different time zone. Okay, so let's say America, Los Angeles. So let me just press that so you can see. I don't want to keep swapping screens to save time. So this one I'm going to paste in. But I think you guys can see this. So America, Los Angeles. So yeah, I'll paste that in. So you can also do that. Just paste that in. Click on submit. So now you see that okay. So see that the time changes to the time there. Okay. So you see that the time changes, but now you notice something that is showing the time that we have now, but it's still also showing the time that like the Coins Lagos African time, and it's also showing the Los Angeles time. It's like going back and forth between the two of them. So why that is happening is because of the interval. So this interval already, when we first initialize it, this interval will always be running. Now we change the time zone, we're now creating another interval. So both of them are running at the same time. That's what is causing this clash. But what we're supposed to do is when it changes, we're supposed to stop this. So how we'll do that? Let's store this interval in a variable. Let's call it interval. So anytime this is done, we just return an anonymous function that will just clear the interval. Which interval is it clearing? This interval, because we're going to initiate a new one. So now if you go back to your app and you enter a new time zone, you see that it doesn't change back and forth, back and forth. So you can also go to the World Time API documentation to see a list of all the time zones they have. So I think the URL to their website can just this it's right http worldtimeapi.org. So you can go to their site and see a list of all the time zones. You can get the list of all the time zones there. So yes, that's updating. But now the next thing we're going to do, and this is going to be the last part, is error handling. Okay, so we notice that, okay, let's say if you don't enter a valid time zone, okay, like it just crashes. Like it doesn't show any dates, nothing happens. It doesn't notify us that there was an error, nothing happens, just does that, just freezes like that. Okay, so let's go to the next part. That's the part 6 of this. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a function. We are going to call that function fetch time zones. Okay, it's going to be an asynchronous function. Okay, it's going to be an asynchronous function. Sync. Okay, so now it's going to go to a particular URL and get all the time zones. Okay, so this is the endpoint. So it goes, if you paste this in your browser, you see an array of all the available time zones. So it just display all of that there. So now what we're going to do is that when we get that data, we convert it to a JSON and we return that data. Okay, so inside our handle submit. So firstly, we are going to need to make this asynchronous. So now, first we are going to do, we are going to fetch all the time zones. So we'll wait for it to fetch. Store it inside these time zones. Okay. Then when that is now done, the next thing we are now going to do, we are now going to check if it's valid. So the way we are going to do that is we are going to create a new variable. Just say const is valid. That will now be equals to time zones. Okay, so now let me explain what is going on here. So this time zones this time zone is an array. So when we want to find something that matches this specific condition. Okay. So how that is going to work is, so for each of the elements, we are going to go through every single time zone. So it's going to call it time zone. So if the time zone dot okay, so what is now happening here? So if the time zone, if it gets where this is not even correct, if it gets where the time zone is equals to our imputed time zone, that means this time zone is valid. So what we can now say is if it is not valid, we just return. Okay, so now if you go and just type in anything and click on submit, you see that the app doesn't just crash, because if it's not valid, we are going to like return. So we are going to like hop out of this function. So that's what is happening. But if we paste in something accurate, so let's paste in this America, Los Angeles, and press submit. you see that it takes a bit of time because like going through and checking whether the time zone is actually correct. Then when you see that it's correct, now updates the time and it updates the dates that we have there. Okay, so now when that is now done, so say that while it's loading, you don't get any message that okay it's loading or something like that. So now what we're now going to do is we're going to install a library that will help us show toast. So we're going to run this command native toast message. So yeah, we're going to install this. So we'll wait for it to load. Wait for it to load. Okay. Okay, so we're almost done. Okay, so now this is already loaded. React Native toast message. Okay. So now let's display. So before we can even display the toast, inside our app.js, let's surround it with a fragment because we want to export multiple things. We're going to export toasts. Okay. So this toast is now going to come from going to sorry, I'm going to export toast. So now this toast is now going to come from I'm going to import toast from React Native Toast message. So that's the package that we just installed that helps us to display toast. So this just serves like a container basically. So when we just like fire toasts, it gets displayed here. So now inside our home.js, our home screen, let's now fire toast. So first thing we are going to need to do is we're going to need to import the toast inside our home. We're going to need to import that. So when it is loading, so at first what we don't say is toast say toast dot show. So what do we want to show? Um, type, let's just call it info. So type is going to be info and the text one. Say the text one, let's just say loading. Let's call it loading. And the text two will also call it, let's say please wait. Okay. And also one more thing, auto close, auto hide. That will be false. So like this won't close automatically. We want to close it by ourselves. Okay, so this will happen. It will wait for this all to get completed. Fetch the time zone, check whether it's valid. So it will be showing this so the user will know that okay, something is happening. Okay. So now if it is not valid, what do we want to do? We don't just want to return like that. We want to show them, we'll show them a toast. That's if it's not valid. We'll show them a toast. But first we have to close this toast. So that will be toast toast dot hide. Okay, so this will just close every open toast. So first thing, this we'll just call this type of toast error. Then we give it a title, let's say invalid time zone, and what do you want inside here? You can just say something like please enter a valid time zone. Okay, so when that is done, okay, okay, so when that is now done already, if it is valid, what do you want to do? You just want to close the loading toast. You just say toast dot hide. So I think that is all. So let's just quickly go through everything that we have. So inside our styles, we just have some basic styles and all. Inside our util, so this function, the also function gets time. So this local is setting the language. like it should display the response in. So this pass zone, we don't want to convert it to our local time zone. Whatever time zone we supply, we want to leave it as that. Then we format it to based on this string. So you can check more for the documentation on moments. Just type in on Google moments JS, you see their website and can read about the other ways of formatting they have. Then here the same thing, pass zone are formatting it based on this string. Then inside our app.js, we talked about loading fonts in our other class. And if the fonts are not loaded, we show the loading screen. If it has loaded, we show the home. This is our toast container. Then inside our home screen, okay, so it's quite a lot. So this function is to get the date. This is to get the time zone. So we are creating states to hold the time zone and the dates because they are how we're using states here is just basically because they are being updated constantly. And when they change, we want to like render them in our UI. So once so when any of these changes, it will render what we have here. So like it will now show the updated things that we have here. So that's why we're using states for that. So this use effects when the app loads by default, we set the time zone to the local time zone. And anytime the time zone changes, we are going to get the dates and we set the dates. So now this you collect user inputs. When the user enters something, we show the loading message. We get all the time zone. We check if the time zone is valid. If it is not valid, we show an error message. If it is valid, we close the toast and we update the time zone. So that's a basic walkthrough. So a way you can take this further is to maybe create a separate page that lists all the time zones. So we have all the time zones here. So we talked about mapping through an array in the Notes app. So you know how to map through an array, like how we did with our Notes app. So we just map through the array, list all the time zones, click on one, it takes them to a page where they see the date and the time of that particular time zone. That's another way in which you can implement this same app. Okay, so um, I'm trying to run it, but I'm getting an error connection timeout. I'm guessing it is because of my internet connection. I'm guessing it's because of my internet. Let me try this so I can show what we have. Okay, let me go through. I think there have been an issue somewhere. Figure out where that issue is coming from. Okay, so the API is actually down right now. That is some I don't know whether it's because of my internet or why that is working this way. But okay, okay, so the API is down right now. Let me see what I can. Okay, what kind of API? Okay, so if let us wait a little while, hopefully their site comes back online. Okay. But like an API like this, just for demonstration purpose, because of reasons like this, we can't actually use this API for any like major anything major that you are building. You can't use something like this for something major that you are building. So let me just share my let me share the Chrome window. Let me share. Okay, so yeah, I'm currently trying to access the word time API, but this is not responding. The website is not responding, as you can see, but this should be working fine on your end. And I think that should be also. I just sent the link on GitHub. I sent the link on GitHub to the chat, so you can follow along with the code. And maybe you can try it out some other time when their sites comes back. I think this is where we'll close it for today. So another app done. So a notes app. So this app it just lets basically how I wanted us to gain that's for and if you are building any app, you're going to be working with an API. That's a way of providing it's just like a service that gives data to your app. So yeah, we're also showed you the basics of implementing an API. Okay. So I think that will be all for today. So have a good weekend. Thank you.